In a luxurious ballroom in Manhattan, a uniformed waitress moves with impossible elegance, her steps flowing like water as she serves the city's wealthiest guests. When the music begins to play, something extraordinary happens. She can't resist the rhythm, and her movements reveal a technique that leaves everyone paralyzed. But what nobody knows is that this humble woman carries a secret that's about to revolutionize the life of one of the country's most powerful families, especially that of a child who has never been able to communicate with the world. Diana Washington woke up at 5 in the morning every day, not by choice, but out of necessity. At 32 years old, she carried on her shoulders the weight of supporting her mother, Mrs. Grace Washington, who had lost the use of her legs after a stroke. The small house in the Bronx was simple, but clean and organized with the care of someone who transforms any place into a home. Diana worked as a waitress at the Grand Ballroom, one of New York's most sophisticated venues, where parties cost more than she earned in an entire year. Every day, she put on her black and white uniform, tied her curly hair in an impeccable bun, and walked 40 minutes to work, saving bus fare for her mother's medications. What nobody at the Grand Ballroom knew was that Diana had graduated in dance movement therapy from Columbia University, with a specialization in nonverbal communication and work with special needs children. Her memory for choreographies was photographic. She could reproduce any sequence of movements after seeing it just once, and even more impressive, she could create therapeutic dances that connected directly with each person's specific emotions and needs. But her diplomas were stored in a drawer, along with dreams that reality had forced her to postpone. Subscribe to our channel to follow this incredible story of overcoming and discovery. Diana's life took a different turn on Saturday night, when businessman Robert Sterling decided to celebrate his pharmaceutical company's 15th anniversary with a grand party. Sterling was known for his coldness in business and his emotional distance, even from his own family. A widower for 5 years, he was raising alone his son Michael, an 8-year-old boy who had been born with a neurological condition that prevented him from speaking. Michael was a brilliant child. His expressive eyes revealed a sharp intelligence, but his inability to communicate verbally had created an invisible barrier between father and son. Robert, consumed by guilt and frustration at not being able to help the boy, had become even more closed off, turning his wealth into a golden prison where communication happened only through therapists, nannies, and specialized teachers. The party supervisor was Patricia Hamilton, a 50-year-old woman who had built her career intimidating employees and flattering wealthy clients. Patricia despised Diana from the first day, making derogatory comments about her origin, her skin color, and her social condition. For Patricia, Diana represented everything she tried to forget about her own humble origins, and therefore treated her with special cruelty, always looking for reasons to humiliate her publicly. The party was at its peak when the hired orchestra began playing a classical waltz. The guests danced in the main ballroom while Diana and the other waiters served champagne and canapes. Michael Sterling was sitting in a distant armchair, observing everything with his curious eyes, but remaining isolated from the movement around him. His nanny was dozing in a nearby chair, and Robert was too busy with investors to pay attention to his son. That's when something magical happened. Diana was crossing the ballroom with a tray when the music changed to a more rhythmic Brazilian song. Involuntarily, her feet began to follow the beat. Her hips moved with hypnotic naturalness, and for a few seconds she completely forgot where she was. The movements flowed through her body as if she were an instrument of the music itself, each gesture loaded with an expressiveness that transcended words. Michael was completely fascinated. For the first time in years, his eyes lit up with something beyond resignation. He got up from the armchair and walked toward Diana, extending his small hand in a shy but determined gesture. Diana noticed the boy approaching and instinctively crouched down to his height. Without thinking about the consequences, she gently took Michael's hand and began to guide him in simple steps, adapting her movements to the child's natural rhythm. It was as if a secret language had been established between them, a pure communication through movement and music. Patricia Hamilton exploded in fury. With her face red with indignation, she marched across the ballroom and grabbed Diana by the arm with enough force to leave marks. "How dare you touch Mr. Sterling's son?" she screamed, making all the guests stop to observe the scene. "You're just a waitress, an insignificant employee who doesn't have the right to even look at this child." Patricia's words echoed through the ballroom like whiplashes, each syllable loaded with poison and prejudice. Diana tried to explain, but Patricia wouldn't allow it. "You're fired, and I'll make sure you never work anywhere in this city again. People like you need to know their place." Michael, frightened by the screaming, began making desperate gestures with his hands, trying to defend Diana, but nobody could understand what he wanted to communicate. His attempts to speak resulted only in frustrated sounds that increased the chaos of the situation even more. Robert Sterling finally approached, his face a mask of controlled coldness. "What's happening here?" he asked, and Patricia quickly told her version of the facts, painting Diana as an opportunist who had behaved inappropriately with Michael. Tears rolled down Diana's face as she tried to explain that she had only responded to the child's invitation to dance, but her words seemed insignificant before Patricia's authority and Sterling's power. The businessman looked at Diana with disdain and said coldly, "I hope to never see you around here again." But Diana's life was about to get even more complicated. 3 days after the incident, she discovered that Patricia had kept her threat. All the event companies in the city had been contacted and warned not to hire Diana Washington. Her reputation had been systematically destroyed through lies and slander. Without work and with bills accumulating, Diana found herself forced to accept occasional cleaning jobs and elderly care, earning much less than she needed to maintain her mother's treatment. Mrs. Grace, noticing her daughter's desperation, suggested that Diana sell her dance instruments and therapy books to get money, but Diana firmly refused. "Mom, these are the only things that connect me to who I really am," she said, holding her mother's trembling hands. "I can't completely give up my identity." Meanwhile, at the Sterling mansion, Michael had entered a deep depression. The boy refused to eat, didn't want to play, and spent hours looking out the window as if waiting for Diana to appear. Robert, worried about his son's behavior, hired new therapists and psychologists, but nothing seemed to work. Michael had experienced something special that night, a genuine connection through dance, and now felt more isolated than ever. Like this video if you're rooting for justice to be served. The turning point in the story began when Robert Sterling received an unexpected call from his sister Clara, who lived in Los Angeles and worked as an investigative journalist. Clara had heard about the incident at the party through mutual acquaintances and decided to research more about Diana Washington. What she discovered shocked her. Diana wasn't just an ordinary waitress. She was a highly qualified dance therapist, graduated from one of the country's best universities, with specializations in child development and nonverbal communication. Clara found academic articles written by Diana, videos of presentations at scientific conferences, and testimonials from families that had been transformed by her work. There was a master's thesis on dance therapy as a communication tool for children with special needs that had won national awards. Clara also discovered that Diana had abandoned a promising career to care for her sick mother, working as a waitress out of pure financial necessity. When Clara confronted her brother with this information, Robert initially refused to believe it. "That's impossible," he said. "If she's so qualified, why was she working as a waitress?" Clara responded with a question that hit him hard. "And why do you, being such a financially successful father, can't communicate with your own son?" Determined to discover the truth, Robert discreetly hired a private investigator to verify the information brought by Clara. The report he received 2 weeks later left him devastated. Diana Washington was indeed an exceptional professional who had sacrificed her career to care for her family. Even more shocking were the testimonials from other families who had worked with her before her mother became ill. One mother reported how Diana had helped her autistic son communicate for the first time through dance. A father described how she had created a special choreography that allowed his daughter with cerebral palsy to express emotions she couldn't verbalize. The videos showed Diana working with children of all ages and conditions, always with infinite patience and an almost supernatural ability to understand each child's needs through their movements. Robert realized he had made a terrible mistake. Not only had he allowed an exceptional professional to be humiliated and fired unjustly, but he had also lost the opportunity for someone who could really help Michael. His arrogance and haste to judge had cost dearly, both for Diana and for his own son. Robert's redemption began with a frantic search for Diana. He discovered where she lived through the investigator and decided to make a personal visit, something completely out of his usual character. When he arrived at the Bronx neighborhood where Diana lived, Robert felt deeply uncomfortable, not because of the area's poverty, but because of his awareness of his own ignorance and prejudice. He had never set foot in a community like that, had never really seen how the people who worked for him lived. Diana's house was small but impeccably organized, with a small garden and front cared for with love. When Diana answered the door and saw him, her first reaction was fear. "Mr. Sterling, I didn't do anything wrong," she said, instinctively protecting herself behind the door. Robert, for the first time in years, felt genuinely ashamed. "Diana, I came to apologize," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I made a terrible mistake, and I need your help." Mrs. Grace, from her wheelchair in the living room, observed the scene with suspicion but remained silent. Diana hesitated before inviting him in, but her kind nature spoke louder than her fear. Robert told Diana everything he had discovered about her education and career, asking forgiveness for the way she had been treated. He explained about Michael's condition since the party and begged her to consider working with his son. "I know I don't deserve your help after what happened," he said, "but Michael needs you." That night, for the first time, I saw my son truly happy. Diana listened in silence, processing everything she was hearing. Part of her wanted to refuse immediately. The humiliation she had suffered was still fresh in her memory. But when Robert described how Michael had regressed after the party, how he had stopped trying to communicate and had isolated himself even more, Diana's heart tightened. She knew the signs. She had seen other children go through the same regression when they lost an important connection. "Mr. Sterling," she said finally, "I can help Michael, but you need to understand something. My work isn't magic. It's science. It's technique. It's years of study and practice. And most importantly, it's respect for the child and their unique way of communicating." Robert nodded vigorously, finally understanding the depth of his previous mistake. The first meeting between Diana and Michael happened in the Sterling Mansion's living room, a completely different environment from the ballroom where they met. Robert had dismissed the nanny and decided to personally observe Diana's work, something he had never done with other therapists. Michael was sitting on the floor, playing distractedly with some building blocks, but when he saw Diana enter, his eyes immediately lit up. He got up and ran toward her, stopping shyly a few meters away. Diana crouched down to the boy's height and began to move slowly, her fluid and expressive gestures telling a silent story. Michael watched fascinated and gradually began to imitate some of Diana's movements. What happened next left Robert speechless. Diana had created instantly a sequence of movements that seemed to speak directly to Michael. Each of the boy's gestures was answered by Diana with a complementary movement, creating a body dialogue that transcended the need for words. It was as if she could read Michael's soul through his movements and respond in a language he understood perfectly. During the following weeks, Diana developed a personalized therapeutic program for Michael. She used her photographic memory to catalog each movement, each reaction, each small progress of the boy. She created a series of exercises that combined dance, theater, and nonverbal communication, always respecting Michael's rhythm and limitations. Slowly, the boy began to open up. His movements became more expressive, more communicative. He began using specific gestures to indicate his needs and emotions, and Diana taught Robert how to interpret and respond to this new form of communication. Most impressive was seeing how Michael flourished under his father's genuine attention. Robert, who previously delegated all of the child's care to third parties, now actively participated in the therapy sessions, learning to communicate with his son in a way he had never imagined possible. With each session, The bond between father and son strengthened, and Michael's vibrant personality began to emerge. But Patricia Hamilton hadn't given up her campaign against Diana. Discovering that she had been hired by the Sterling family, Patricia spread malicious rumors throughout New York's high society. She told everyone who would listen that Diana was an opportunist who was manipulating Robert Sterling to get money. She went so far as to call the State Board of Health Professionals, making false reports about Diana and questioning her professional competence. Patricia also contacted the sensationalist press, trying to create a scandal about the waitress who seduced a millionaire through his disabled son. Patricia's lies began circulating on social media, and Diana found herself once again being publicly attacked. Photos of her entering and leaving the Sterling mansion were taken by paparazzi and published with malicious captions. Prejudiced comments about her color, her social origin, and her supposed hidden intentions flooded the internet. The pressure was so intense that Diana considered abandoning her work with Michael to protect both herself and the Sterling family from negative exposure. Robert, upon discovering Patricia's defamation campaign, felt a fury he hadn't experienced in years. But this time his anger was directed at injustice, not at the wrong person. He hired the city's best lawyers to sue Patricia for defamation and slander, and used all his contacts in the press to tell Diana's true story. More importantly, Robert decided to organize a public demonstration of Diana's work, inviting other parents of children with special needs, health professionals, academics, and respected journalists to personally witness the extraordinary results she had achieved with Michael. The demonstration was scheduled to take place at the same grand ballroom where everything had started, a symbolic choice that Robert made intentionally. He wanted Diana's redemption to happen exactly at the place where she had been humiliated. The night of the demonstration arrived, and the grand ballroom was packed. Robert had invited not only professionals in the field, but also the families that Patricia had prevented from hiring Diana, offering them the opportunity to meet her work firsthand. Diana arrived at the venue accompanied by Michael, who was visibly nervous, but confident in her presence. Patricia was also present, invited by Robert through his lawyers. She couldn't refuse without appearing guilty of the accusations against her. The ballroom was organized like a small theater, with a central area free for the demonstration and chairs arranged around it. Robert took the microphone and explained to the audience Diana's true story, publicly apologizing for the way she had been treated months before. "I made the mistake of judging an extraordinary person by appearance and circumstances," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Diana Washington is not only an exceptional therapist, she is an exceptional human being who saved my son's life." The climactic moment arrived when Diana began her demonstration. She had prepared a presentation that told Michael's story through dance, showing his journey from isolation to communication. Each movement was loaded with meaning. Each gesture revealed a layer of the boy's complex and brilliant personality. Michael actively participated in the presentation, his movements now fluid and expressive, communicating emotions and ideas that words could never transmit. The audience watched in respectful silence, many with tears in their eyes, witnessing the extraordinary transformation of a child who had been considered lost by conventional standards. But the most impactful moment came when Diana demonstrated how her technique could be adapted for different conditions. She had invited other children with special needs to participate, and within minutes she managed to establish meaningful communication with each of them, using her photographic memory to instantly adapt her movements to each child's specific needs. The demonstration revealed not only Diana's technical competence, but also her extraordinary gift for understanding and connecting with children that the world had labeled as different. Patricia, sitting in the front row, watched the presentation with an expression that varied from initial disdain to shock and, finally, to mortified understanding of the mistake she had made. When the demonstration ended and the audience exploded in emotional applause, Patricia slowly got up and walked toward Diana. In front of everyone present, she knelt before the woman she had tried to destroy and asked for public forgiveness. "I was moved by envy, prejudice, and my own insecurity," she said, tears rolling freely down her face. "Diana, you are everything I always wanted to be, but never had the courage to try. "Forgive me." Patricia's gesture shocked everyone present, but Diana, true to her generous nature, helped Patricia stand up and hugged her, whispering, "Everyone deserves a second chance." Diana's gesture of forgiveness was the most powerful moment of the entire night, demonstrating that her greatness went far beyond her professional abilities. She possessed a generosity of spirit that transformed not only children, but adults wounded by their own prejudices. Leave your comment about this incredible demonstration of forgiveness and overcoming. The consequences of the demonstration were immediate and transformative. Videos of the presentation spread across the internet, but this time with a completely different narrative. Diana went from victim of prejudice to national hero. Universities across the country began inviting her for lectures and workshops. Families of children with special needs formed lines to work with her. The Department of Health contacted her to develop a national dance therapy program. Publishers competed for the right to publish her biography. But most important to Diana was the impact on Michael. The boy had found his voice through movement and now communicated not only with his father, but with the world around him. He had become a confident, expressive, and happy child. Robert, in turn, had been completely transformed. The cold and distant businessman had become a present and loving father, who had learned that true success was measured by the ability to connect with the people we love. He established a foundation in Michael's name, dedicated to financing research in nonverbal communication and providing free therapy for low-income families. Patricia Hamilton also underwent a radical transformation. Deeply impacted by Diana's generosity, she resigned from her position at the Grand Ballroom and decided to dedicate her event organization experience to social causes. She became the volunteer coordinator of the Sterling Foundation, organizing charity events and using her contacts in high society to raise funds for children with special needs. Patricia discovered that working for a cause greater than herself brought a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced in her previous career. She and Diana developed an unlikely but genuine friendship, based on mutual respect and understanding that both had grown through their difficult experiences. Diana's life was completely transformed. With the success of her work, she could finally give her mother the medical treatment she needed. Mrs. Grace underwent experimental surgery that partially restored movement in her legs, allowing her to walk with the help of special equipment. Diana opened her own dance therapy center, a welcoming and colorful space where children of all social conditions and special needs could find their unique way of expressing themselves. The center offered full scholarships for low-income families, ensuring that no child was deprived of treatment due to financial issues. Diana also started a training program to form other dance therapists, multiplying her impact and ensuring that her methodology could help children throughout the country. Michael became a kind of informal ambassador for Diana's therapy center. Now 9 years old, he had developed his own communication system that combined gestures, movements, and facial expressions in such a sophisticated way that he frequently left adults impressed with his silent eloquence. He participated in awareness campaigns about special needs, always alongside Diana and his father, showing the world that being different doesn't mean being limited. The relationship between Michael and Robert became an example of how love and patience can overcome any communication barrier. Robert learned to dance with his son, not just physically, but emotionally, creating a bond that transcended words. The impact of Diana's work spread far beyond New York. Her methodology was adopted by hospitals, schools, and rehabilitation centers in various American cities. She was invited to international conferences, where her story inspired professionals from around the world. Foreign universities offered scholarships for her to expand her research, but Diana chose to remain in the United States, committed to her mission of democratizing access to dance therapy. She developed a free app that teaches basic techniques of communication through movement to parents of children with special needs, allowing her impact to reach families across the entire country. The most profound transformation, perhaps, was Robert's. The businessman who previously measured success only in financial figures now understood that true wealth resided in genuine human connections. He completely restructured his company, implementing inclusion policies and social responsibility programs. He established quotas for hiring people with disabilities, created a more human and compassionate work environment, and allocated a significant percentage of company profits to social causes. His relationship with employees changed radically. He learned to see each person as a unique individual, with their own stories, dreams, and talents. Diana never forgot her humble origins, and made sure to regularly return to the Bronx neighborhood, where she grew up, to offer free workshops for the community. She transformed Small Community Hall into a dance and therapy space, where children from the periphery could discover their own forms of expression. Many of these children, inspired by Diana's example, began dreaming of careers in health and arts. She created a scholarship program for talented young people from the community, ensuring that lack of financial resources wouldn't be an impediment to higher education. Diana's story became a symbol of hope and transformation across the country. Her biography, titled The Dance of Life: How Movement Saves Souls, became a national bestseller. Resources raised from book sales were entirely destined for expanding her therapy center and creating new nuclei in other cities. Diana was decorated by the federal government for her exceptional contribution to health and social inclusion. But for her, the greatest reward continued to be the smile of each child who managed to express themselves for the first time through dance. Diana's therapy center became an international model of excellence and humanization in treating children with special needs. Delegations from various countries visited the center to study her methodology, and Diana was invited to advise the creation of similar programs on other continents. But she never lost sight of her original mission: ensuring that every child, regardless of their social condition or special needs, had access to the fundamental right to express themselves and be understood. Years after that fateful day at the Grand Ballroom, Diana, Robert, and Michael regularly met, not just for therapy sessions, but as a chosen family, united by the transformative experience they had shared. Michael, now a teenager eloquent in his unique body language, frequently helped Diana work with younger children, showing them that being different was, in fact, being special. Robert, who had discovered fatherhood at 40 years old, became one of the most active defenders of disability rights in the country, using his business influence to promote significant legislative and social changes. Patricia's transformation also continued flourishing. Deeply impacted by Diana's generosity, she married one of the therapists she met through work at the Sterling Foundation, a gentle man who worked with autistic children and who taught her about the true beauty of human diversity. Together, they adopted 2 sisters with special needs, and Patricia discovered that motherhood had awakened in her a capacity for unconditional love that she never knew she possessed. Her house became a home full of laughter, movement, and communication that transcended words. Mrs. Grace, with her mobility partially restored, became a constant presence at Diana's therapy center, where she told stories to children and offered words of wisdom and encouragement to parents. Her experience as someone who had faced physical limitations brought a unique and valuable perspective to the work developed at the center. She frequently said, "My daughter always knew how to dance, but the world needed to learn to see her dance." The methodology developed by Diana was officially recognized by the American Board of Physical Therapy and Occupational Therapy as a legitimate therapeutic specialty, establishing national guidelines for dance therapy practice in the United States. Universities began offering graduate courses based on her methods, and a new generation of specialized therapists began being trained following her revolutionary protocols. What began as a simple spontaneous dance between a waitress and a special child had transformed into a national movement of inclusion and understanding. Diana frequently reflected on how her life had changed radically that night at the Grand Ballroom, when she chose to follow her instinct of kindness instead of worrying about social conventions. Her decision to extend her hand to Michael, even knowing it could cause her problems, had been the catalyst for transformations she could never have imagined. Michael, now a 16-year-old young man, had become a respected activist in the special needs community. His unique form of communication had inspired the creation of a specific gestural language that was adopted by various educational institutions. He frequently accompanied Diana on her international lectures, demonstrating through his own journey how love, patience, and proper understanding could unlock potentials that society often considered impossible. His relationship with his father continued being a touching example of how true communication goes far beyond spoken words. Robert, at 50 years old, had become a completely different man. His pharmaceutical company developed medications specific for neurological conditions, always with accessible prices and free distribution programs for low-income families. He remarried to a pediatrician specialized in child development, whom he met through the foundation's work, and together they adopted 3 children with different special needs, creating a diverse and loving family, where each difference was celebrated as a unique form of beauty. Diana's center had expanded to include a scientific research program, where medical, psychology, and occupational therapy students conducted studies on the neurological effects of dance therapy. The scientific results proved what Diana had always known intuitively, that rhythmic and expressive movement created new neural connections, especially in children with autism spectrum conditions and other special needs. Her methods were documented in dozens of scientific articles published in renowned international journals. Patricia, now 58 years old, had found her true vocation as a defender of disability rights. She used her exceptional organizational skills to coordinate national awareness campaigns, always working in close collaboration with Diana and other specialists. Her personal transformation had been so complete that she frequently served as an example in lectures about how prejudice can be overcome through education and direct experience. Her 2 adopted daughters, now teenagers, were confident and accomplished young women who inspired other families to consider adopting children with special needs. Diana's legacy transcended borders when the World Health Organization invited her to develop international dance therapy protocols that could be adapted for different cultures and economic resources. She spent 6 months traveling the world, visiting hospitals and rehabilitation centers in developing countries, teaching her techniques to local professionals and adapting her methods to diverse social and economic realities. In each country she visited, Diana left a nucleus of therapists trained in her methods, creating an international network of professionals committed to communication through movement. The social impact of Diana's work extended far beyond the health field. Her story had inspired significant legislative changes in the United States, including laws that guaranteed greater inclusion of people with disabilities in the job market and better public funding for alternative therapies. She testified before Congress about the importance of investments in humanized treatments, and her words influenced the approval of bills that benefited millions of American families. Mrs. Grace, at 75 years old, had become a kind of unofficial matriarch of the community formed around Diana's center. Her small house, which previously sheltered only her and her daughter in financial difficulties, was now a regular meeting point for families participating in therapeutic programs. She cooked community meals, offered advice based on decades of life experience, and provided a welcoming environment where parents of children with special needs could share their joys and concerns without judgment. Diana's greatest achievement, perhaps, was creating a scholarship program that allowed hundreds of low-income young people to graduate in specialized therapies. Many of these young people were people with disabilities who had been her patients in childhood and now returned as qualified professionals, creating a virtuous cycle of transformation and empowerment. This program proved that talent and dedication exist regardless of socioeconomic circumstances, needing only adequate opportunities to flourish. The therapy center had become a complex of 3 buildings, including specialized dance rooms, individual offices, a resource library for families, an auditorium for presentations and workshops, and even a small theater where children could present their own artistic creations to families and the community. Each space was designed thinking about accessibility and comfort for people with the most diverse physical and sensory needs. Michael developed his own teaching method, working specifically with teenagers who faced communication difficulties. His personal experience as someone who had found his voice through movement gave him unique credibility with young people going through similar situations. He created workshops where teenagers with special needs could explore their identity and expressiveness through dance, always with Diana's support and a team of specialized therapists. Diana's story was adapted into a documentary that won international awards and was shown at film festivals around the world. The film not only told her personal journey, but also educated the public about the realities faced by people with special needs and their families. Resources raised from the documentary were used to finance the opening of new therapy centers in underserved regions of the country. Robert established an international exchange program that allowed professionals from other countries to come to the United States to study the methods developed by Diana, while American therapists traveled abroad to share knowledge and learn new approaches. This cultural exchange significantly enriched the work developed at the center and created a global community of professionals dedicated to therapy through movement. Patricia's transformation had been so remarkable that she became a motivational speaker, sharing her experience of overcoming prejudice and envy to inspire other people to question their own unconscious biases. Her lectures, always conducted in partnership with Diana, showed how education and direct experience could overcome decades of harmful social conditioning. She frequently said, "I spent 50 years of my life being the wrong person until I met Diana, who taught me how to be the right person." Diana's center also developed an innovative adult life preparation program, helping young people with special needs develop practical and professional skills that would allow them to live more independently. The program included training in adaptive communication, social skills, professional preparation, and even dating and relationships, always respecting individual capacities and limitations of each participant. Years later, when Diana turned 40, a grand celebration was organized at the Grand Ballroom, the same place where her extraordinary journey had begun. Hundreds of people were present, families that had been transformed by her work, professionals she had trained, authorities who had implemented public policies based on her recommendations, and children who were now accomplished adults, thanks to the early intervention she had provided. Michael, now a young adult eloquent in his unique language, gave an emotional presentation where he told, through dance, the story of his own transformation and that of all the children who had found their voices through Diana's work. His presentation left not a dry eye in the audience and served as a powerful demonstration of how love, patience, and adequate scientific method could overcome any communication obstacle. Robert gave a speech where he publicly thanked Diana for not only having saved his son, but for having saved himself, transforming him from a cold and distant businessman into a loving father and socially conscious citizen. He announced the creation of a permanent endowment fund that would guarantee the continuity of Diana's work for future decades, regardless of economic fluctuations or political changes. Patricia, emotional, spoke about how Diana had taught her that it's never too late to change, to grow, to become a better person. She announced the creation of a national social re-education program that would help other people overcome their prejudices through education and direct experience with people with disabilities. Mrs. Grace, supported by her special cane, but walking with dignity, gave a brief but powerful speech where she said, "I always knew my daughter was special, but it took all of you to see it so she could show the whole world her light. Thank you for believing in her when she didn't even completely believe in herself." At the end of the celebration, Diana took the microphone for the last time. Her voice was choked with emotion when she said, "It all started with a simple, spontaneous dance between a waitress who just followed her heart and a child who needed to be seen and understood. Today, tens of thousands of children have the opportunity to find their own voices through movement. This taught me that no matter how small or simple an act of kindness may seem, if it's genuine, it has the power to transform the world." Diana concluded her speech looking directly at Michael, who was in the front row next to Robert. "Michael, you taught me that the deepest communication doesn't need words. You showed me that when we look beyond appearances and limitations, we find extraordinary souls waiting to shine. Thank you for trusting me that first night, When you extended your little hand to dance with me, that gesture changed not only our lives, but the lives of thousands of other children around the world. Diana Washington's story became a permanent symbol of how kindness, competence, and perseverance can overcome any prejudice or adversity. She proved that it doesn't matter where we come from or what circumstances we face. We all have the potential to make a difference in the world, as long as we have the courage to follow our talents and our compassion. Her journey from underestimated waitress to international revolutionary of therapy through movement inspired an entire generation to believe that extraordinary changes can begin with simple gestures of humanity and understanding. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of overcoming, forgiveness, and transformation that prove that good always triumphs when combined with determination and competence. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that we all have unique gifts waiting to be discovered and used to make the world a better place.